Hello, everyone. Today we're going to talk about your business and what you might want to be doing in the face of the recession in terms of your own strength, your own resilience, and your own ways to weather this storm, whatever it may be. We're going to dive into that when we get right back.
You're listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense with your host, Doug Thorpe. Here's Doug.
Hello, everyone. You're listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense. My name is Doug Thorpe, and you are with us today. My guest is Claire Chandler. She is a business coach, executive coach, and subject matter expert in many things. Honestly, on one hand, very similar to what I do, but she's got her own set of experiences and ideas. And as we said in the lead-in, we're going to talk a little bit about what businesses ought to be looking at in the face of some of the uncertainty that you might be hearing or feeling out there in the market. But before we get into that, first, let me say, Claire, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Doug. It's so great to be here.
And I always like to ask my guests to give us a little bit of backstory. Where have you come from? How did you get to where you are now? And what is this passion you have?
Oh, what a loaded question, right? So I'm a lifelong Jersey girl, and I spent the bulk of my earlier career in corporate America. After, by the way, swearing when I graduated college, I would never work in corporate America.
Never do that. Yeah.
Yeah. But then, of course, you learn never to say never, and that's where the opportunities were. And I wouldn't trade the couple of decades that I spent there. They were really invaluable in helping shape who I am now and what I bring to the table as an entrepreneur. Back in 2011, I was still in a corporate role. I was the vice president of HR for a fairly large company, and I was going 150 miles an hour, traveling 3 weeks out of 4, you know the drill. And long story short, was diagnosed with cancer. And fast forward to today, I am completely cancer-free. So that is not how this story ends. But the gift that diagnosis gave to me was the severe wake-up call that I was not pursuing a route that I was passionate about. I had a team that I loved. They were super, super talented. I had colleagues who I still consider family today. But in terms of the executive track and the hamster wheel that I was on, it sort of woke me up to the realization that was really not where my heart was. So the company and I parted friends. I went out on my own and spent the first couple of years, 2011 to like mid 2013, really figuring out what it was that I wanted to specialize in. And so by 2013, I landed on kind of what my passion was going to be and what I was going to build a business around. And it's really to help businesses grow, build, expand, and inspire in the right ways. And so I work with smaller companies at a founder and a business owner level, larger organizations through their HR organization, because that's where I've got a lot of direct expertise, and every company in between in a lot of industries, but really to help teams form in a more cohesive way, people to rise up through the ranks, and then of course laterally in ways that feed their internal motivators, and leaders to really step up into their role and be the types of people that their teams want to follow.
Yeah. Well, first, let me say, happy to hear your cancer situation has resolved, and congratulations on that. And I know that's always a challenge as it comes. And secondly, let me say, welcome to the game. How many times I talk to entrepreneurs and owners now that have done just that. They came out of corporate. They had that wake up day, hopefully not as dramatic as yours was, but that nonetheless, that day they woke up and said, there's something else out there. This is not what I want to be doing. I took a somewhat similar turn, although I ran through a 20-year career in banking and then was offered an early retirement, and I did the Jerry Maguire show me the money and well, gladly walked out the door, not having any real particular idea what I might truly do. But I did what all good bankers do. I set up a consulting business for my former banking customers, and the rest is history.
It's
uh,
so interesting though, how every entrepreneur I've ever talked to, and it sounds like you're the same way, everyone at least that I've interacted with had this transformative event that propelled them out of that corporate bubble, right? Not always as dramatic as a cancer diagnosis, certainly, but I talk to a lot of people who are still in the corporate world who aspire to be entrepreneurs. And when I ask them why they haven't made the leap, they say, it just doesn't feel like it's the right time. I'm not ready. I need more of this or that or the other. And for the rest of us, it's like this metaphysical sledgehammer that kind of comes into our world and says, the time is now. If you're waiting for everything to align, if you're waiting for a sign, this is it. There is no grander sign.
yeah,
You have to go out and pursue what you're passionate about,
yeah.
before the story ends.
I'm reminded of the old classic teaching: when God closes the door, look for the window, and I think that's what you have to do. But I will say, I'm going to add a thought to that. I think the true entrepreneur, the person that was meant to be an entrepreneur, is the one that's looking at that moment, saying, "Glass is half full, not half empty." It's that the person that digs in a little bit and wants to hang on to that security. And not to say they won't ever become an entrepreneur, but it may be a tougher struggle for them if they're not too quick and ready when that moment arises to go ahead and pull the trigger and go for it. Because all the studies tell us the true entrepreneur has a whole different risk tolerance than anybody else, and it's that willingness to take a little risk, willingness to bet on yourself and go out there and make it happen that makes the difference. And so anyway, I digress. But so we were talking in the green room before the show started. There, front page news. I mean, as we're recording today, this is one of the days when the Federal Reserve raised the interest rates in an attempt to fight inflation and stem the tide of the recession. I was sharing with Claire that I have two mastermind groups I work, and in those groups we've been having discussions about what should I as a small business owner be doing in the face of the recession. And people have already begun talking about cutting back and downsizing and all of that. And I have been quick to caution people, if you identify bona fide fat in your organization or on your income statement expense category, yes, cut that, but don't cut muscle out of your organization. If you've got talent, you've got a team that's already working and been effective for you, don't cut that. And Claire, you do a lot of work in this actual expansion idea, so connect those dots for us, if you will.
Yeah, it is such a timely topic. And when I talk to business owners, because my bread and butter is helping them build and helping them grow, right? Build from the ground up if they are just starting out, and then grow and expand without losing effectiveness, without losing quality, without losing key talent. And we are absolutely at a strange time, right? Because most business owners, to your point about entrepreneurs, most business owners are wired toward growth. They are wired toward building something around their own personality, their individual passion and expertise, but then over time scaling that. And we are at a strange time where growth is just not the appetite that most business owners have. And I would absolutely caution business owners, as I sense that you are, not to make hasty decisions that scale you back, but take advantage of this time to really size up and evaluate and strengthen what you already have. So I came onto your show kind of prepared to talk through a few ways that people can, business owners and business leaders can get their companies in a better position to grow. And those 5 ways that I'm going to just sort of run through real quickly,
Yeah.
They don't change in a recession. In fact, it's more critical now to spend time really evaluating and recalibrating so that when the doors open up and the planets align and the economy is such that you do feel more confident to grow and expand again, you've done the legwork during this window. So this is a great window of opportunity for business owners who are a bit anxious about what the recession might mean to their business, not to cut to the bone, to your point, but to really take a look inward and say, what can we do to make sure we have the fittest, strongest company we possibly can, so that when we are ready to grow, we're not wasting time that our competitors are wasting trying to get ready for that expansion. So that's kind of caveat one. So the 5 ways, the one always starts for me with mission clarity. And some people hear that and say, that's such a fuzzy thing. And of course, we've got a mission statement on our website. I often find that a mission statement and a true mission, a purpose for your business, are very, very different, especially if some time has passed since the last time that you posted your mission statement on the website, right? Gets very stale, and it's great for, for marketing purposes, but is it still a relevant rallying cry for the people in your business, especially now? Hand in hand with this upcoming recession is this ongoing, not only global pandemic, which is unprecedented, but this great resignation, right? Companies of all sizes are really struggling to attract talent, to incentivize talent, and to keep talent. And so now more than ever, companies really need to do a little bit of groundwork, and it doesn't have to take a long time, but really to reevaluate what they are in business to accomplish, whether it's for an aspiration toward growth or at least towards stabilizing what they have already built. So that first way of almost recession proofing your company and getting it ready for future growth is to get really, really clear on your mission, your purpose. What are you truly in business to accomplish? And once you can articulate that to your people, they're going to take notice. They're going to start to attach their own personal meaning to that, because that's super, super important. So that's way number 1. Way number 2 is, if this is our mission, if this is our purpose, if this is what we have been put on this earth to accomplish professionally, what are the fundamentals required to achieve that, right? And what I mean by that is, what are the experiences? What are the value propositions? What are the knowledge, the skills, the abilities we have to demonstrate in order to move closer to achieving that mission? Companies of any size, more than 1 employee, take a real close look at your stellar performers, your A players. What's the DNA in them? What are the things that they do that differentiate them? What are, we always talk about, oh, if I could only clone this person or that person, and make a team built around that. We'll quantify what that looks like and put that onto your inventory of what those mission critical fundamentals are.
If I can interject right there.
Yeah.
One of the things that is a very common, I'll call it a malady or problem with entrepreneurship, for the person that's really starting out in the early stages, inevitably, and I don't know that I can think of a case ever that I know of that this has not happened, they will turn to friends and family to help staff their business, to get them going, get them started. And maybe it's a sense of, I know I can trust this person, or maybe quite frankly, it's, I don't have to pay them that much. They're willing to do it to help me out. And then the business, gets trajectory and it takes off. And now this person is there and they've become an integrated part of the activity that's going on. But when you really start doing what you're talking about doing, is really getting down to the nuts and bolts of what's going to make this business successful, maybe Aunt Sally's not the person I need in that role. She was wonderful. She was great. It was really good. She helped me out. But, what should I do about that?
Oh, that's such a great call out. Business owners and founders have to be extremely intentional about the type of business they're going to have. A family-owned, family-run business has a lot of advantages, but it has a lot of pitfalls that are very different from staffing up in a different way. I think all of us who are entrepreneurs yes, we look to the people in our closest inner circle first to help us build, if for nothing else, but to be a sounding board and to be a bit of a morale boost. But the most important hire, and I say this to every business owner, the most important hire you're ever going to make is the very first one. You set the standard based on who that first person is that you put on the payroll. Because now you've started to share the personality, the vision, the mission, the work, the operations, the marketing, the brand with someone else who's not you. And it's easy intellectually to say, well, if I hire somebody who I'm related to or my best friend that I've grown up with, then I can better ensure that the company's going to run the way that I would run it, because these are people who look like me, they talk like me, they believe like me, they act like me. Well, there's a danger to that, right? Because any good entrepreneur who's innovative will tell you, the more that you put yourself into that echo chamber and surround yourself with just people who see the world the way that you do, the faster you're going to lose ground to your competitors, the faster you're going to die out because you don't know how to see things differently, more creatively, from different angles.
Yeah.
So, that whole family dynamic, it's great to have the Sunday around the dinner table, unveiling of what you're building and what's going on, and getting that family support. But be really careful, if you don't intend to have a family-owned, family-run business, not to hire Aunt Sally.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where I love the work that Gino Wickman does in his book Traction. And that's the book that's the basis of the entrepreneur operating system. And full disclosure, I am not a licensed EOS implementer, but I'm a big fan of the methods nonetheless. And in particular, the element, and I won't use the right terms, proving I'm not a licensed EOS implementer, but it has to do with defining roles in the company based on what you really need to have happen in that box on the chart. And don't put a personality in it, don't put a name in it, but put functions, requirements, skills, abilities, those things. Paint your boxes with those considerations in mind, and then go see if Aunt Sally can fit that box. Not the other way around. You don't make Aunt Sally fit by just picking and choosing what you give her to do. And no offense to anybody out there that isn't Aunt Sally. That's a universal Sally. So it could be Fred too, but I think it's really important that entrepreneurs be sensitive to that.
Yeah, and you've hit upon something very key, right? I've known business owners who are from different parts of the country where it is perfectly natural to run into the son or daughter of a lifelong friend at the corner store and say, you know what, you come from good stock, show up at my door on Monday and I'm going to put you to work. And don't worry about what that job description looks like, because it's pretty fluid, right? And in some parts of the world, that works great and it sounds great. And, cultures are built around that. But as you grow, if you have any aspiration for growth, whether it's a year from now or 10 years from now, you have to be very careful the precedent that sets, right? The advantage to that, obviously, is you've got much more control over the culture that you're shaping, and you can inspire some flexibility in terms of how individuals are going to contribute. But to come back to your reference to EOS, I think it's much more important and a much better strategy to define, to a great degree of specificity, what it is that you're going to need to accomplish that purpose that you have articulated for yourself and for your people. So that, to your point, you can go out and find people with those mission critical skill sets, whether they're related to you or not. And if they're related to you, make sure you've got a policy or some sort of rules of the game to manage that, right? But otherwise, you want to hire for the right attitudes, the right skills, but you've got to do the groundwork first of understanding why we're in business to begin with, right? What are we on a quest to achieve? And then what do we need to, possess and demonstrate to get there? And that's where those fundamentals come in. Absolutely.
So I interrupted your list. I think you were
headed
to number three.
But please do, because that was hugely valuable to the conversation. Okay, so we went through the first two ways, right? Mission clarity, and then knowing your fundamentals. Once you've got a pretty good comprehensive list of what those fundamentals are, right? And anything that goes on that list has to be one that you say, yes, we need this in order to get there, right? But once you have that full list, regardless of how big or small your company is and where you are in your evolutionary trajectory, you're going to have some things on that list that you already possess in spades, and some things that you either completely lack or at least have under-resourced, right? And so it's important to kind of take that list and split it into two buckets. The one is, what are my fundamental gaps, right? What are the areas that with every new hire, with every new training, with every new performance expectation, with every new role definition, I make sure that we as an organization are strengthening those gaps, because I said that those were mission critical. So if I don't fill them, if I don't address them, if I don't strengthen them, I can't achieve the mission, right?
Right.
And then the second bucket is the opposite. What of those mission critical attributes and skills and DNA and expertise do we already possess in spades? And then some are going to kind of fall between the two. But those things that you feel, not only are these mission critical, but we already do those well, we possess them in spades, etc. Those are levers that you can really put your foot on the gas pedal and really help to increase your competitive advantage. So, a lot of people talk about, well, let's identify our weaknesses and focus all our attention on addressing those. If you do that and you take your attention away from where you are already strong, you're going to lose momentum in the market, regardless of whether we are in a recession and you're not growing right now, or you are fully on a growth trajectory. So it's really important to identify, again, those fundamentals and where they fall between those two buckets.
I like it. Very good point. And I tell you what, Claire, before we get on to the other two, we're going to need to take a short commercial break, and we'll dive right back in. And so hang with us, everybody. We'll be right back.
Business is all about solving complex problems as fast as you can create them. Become the best problem solver by leading others to greatness too. And the first step is going to DougThorpe.com. Doug Thorpe is known globally for coaching entrepreneurs and business leaders, improving their performance and the work output of everyone surrounding them. You can find health, wealth, and happiness by learning to lead others to health, wealth, and happiness. Go to DougThorpe.com now and order Doug's books or hire him to coach your managers. That's DougThorpe.com.
All right, everyone, we're back. This is Leadership Powered by Common Sense. Today I'm visiting with Claire Chandler, and she is sharing with us some ideas and a kind of a framework that she advocates for helping business prepare for and sustain growth and scalability. So we were going through a list of 5 attributes. We got through 3 of them. So real quick, Claire, run down to the first 3.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this is for any business owners who are poised for growth now, or who want to retrench a little bit amidst this wonderful recession that we are tackling at the moment. So those first 3, number 1 is getting clear on your mission. So achieving clarity of purpose, what you're in business to accomplish. Number 2 is knowing your fundamentals that are required to achieve that mission. And then number 3 is knowing of that inventory of fundamentals, which ones are your levers of strength or competitive advantage.
I like that. And as we went to the break, you were talking about that areas that are strong or areas where there might be gaps. There is a tendency to focus on those gap areas. You feel like you got to fill those holes, and you might do that at the expense of the things you're already good at or able to do. And I'm thinking often of, and this is maybe a close relative of this situation. It's not uncommon for a business to start up and you have a central theme, a central purpose of the good or the service that you're providing. But then next thing you know, you get a knock on your door and it's this possible new account or new relationship, customer relationship. It's a whale. It's 10 times bigger than any other customer relationship you already have. And they're saying, well, we like what you do, but it's not quite what we need. We need this thing over here. And you're sitting there looking at your top side and going, oh, if I could do that, I could make 5 times the money. And so, all right, I'll start tinkering and retooling, and I'll give you a bid. And yes, we can do that work. And next thing you know, you're kind of off your game.
Yep.
and chasing that whale who may or may not stay with you for the long run. But for the time they're there, they may drive you nuts about service levels and expectations and all these other things. So talk to us a little bit about that. Where do you think an entrepreneur can draw the line on deciding to take that challenge or pass?
Oh, I love this example because this is where a lot of businesses break, right? That first pivot point where they're trying to grow, and typically they grow not through some strategic, intentional acquisition that fits squarely within their wheelhouse, but more often the case that you just outlined, which is they land a whale of a client that has some of the makings of things that are already a core competency, but then there are largely these other pieces that they say, we need to revamp our entire business model, but we want this whale. And so I'm smirking because, of course, the saying just popped into my head. How do you eat a whale? It's the same way you eat an elephant, right? One bite at a time. When you get a whale of a client, you have to think very, very carefully. It's so attractive to land that whale, to be able to say that you landed that whale, to say that you beat out a competitor in attracting that whale as a client, as a customer. But are you really prepared to completely change your business model to satisfy that whale? Because as big of a revenue bump it might represent in year one, it might sink you by year two. And the statistics on the failure rates of new businesses are already bearing out the fact that you want to be really careful before you make a decision like that. But let's just say hypothetically, the majority of what that whale of a client is looking for from you is something you could fulfill, is something within your wheelhouse. This is where it is even more important not to lose sight of your strengths, right? So if you've done that earlier work of getting really clear on your mission, your purpose, what you're in business to accomplish, and then that inventory of mission critical skills and abilities and attributes, and you've done the work of dividing those into what are your gaps and what are your strengths, you want to lean toward your strengths. So this is a time when it is even more critical not to lose sight of what you already do well. Use those areas as gas pedals for you to strengthen and take root with the relationship with that client. But you also want to be extremely honest with yourself and self-aware of those areas that might be gaps. And depending on the situation, the way that you're going to address those gaps to fulfill the needs of this whale of a client might be different. It might be that you go in a hiring frenzy and you go out and get those skills that complement your gaps. It might be that you lean on a strategic partner and create an opportunity for somebody else that you can subcontract a piece of that engagement to. It might be a hybrid solution. It is truly dependent on the nature of the work and how outside of your existing wheelhouse it is. But if they are looking for things from you, this whale of a client, that you know are part of your mission critical wish list, then what's going to help tip the balance in terms of how you address that and how you meet the needs of the whale that's right in front of you is, how do we bring that in-house? If delivering on this client will require us to address these gaps that we know are mission critical for us anyway, then you want to err on the side of hiring in, training up, supplementing with other resources versus outsourcing. If it's the opposite, and we can fulfill 75% of this client's needs, but this 25% not only is not a strength for us, but is not among our mission critical inventory, well, then it's a clearer decision to outsource that to a strategic partner, a subcontractor, et cetera.
Yeah. It's just so important that an entrepreneur be sensitive to that, because man, the temptation to see that 3x or 5x on your top side revenue just sounds so juicy and so exciting. But if you don't do the accurate analysis of the real impact of that, and that 30% delta of what you don't normally provide that you're going to have to somehow bolt on, if you discover you've got to do that at a loss, at an incremental loss to get there, as we used to say in banking, you can't make that up in volume.
That's right. That's right. Entrepreneurs and those who are aspiring to be entrepreneurs, we are inundated with the Facebook ads, the commercials of the overnight success entrepreneur leaning up against the sports car or the fancy yacht, right, or the supermodel on their arm, right? The reality is that being a successful entrepreneur and having a truly fulfilling business, you have to play for the long game. It requires patience that perhaps doesn't come naturally to you. I know it did not come naturally for me. It does require you to let go of some things, which again goes against the nature of entrepreneurs. We are, by definition, control freaks. It is very difficult for us to let go. But the more we do some of this groundwork and get very specific in defining what it is that we want to accomplish through our business, right, through our business persona, and how we need to get there and what it's going to take to get there, the more specific and the more honest we can get about that, the easier it's going to be to make decisions about the whales that come into our path.
Yeah. Okay, I got you off your list again. Let's
I
get
love
back
it.
to
Keep
that.
these up. This is awesome. This is awesome. Okay, so we went through 1 through 3. We did mission clarity, we did fundamentals, and we did levers of strength. So the fourth way is you want to identify, again, as specifically as you possibly can, what are the obstacles standing in the way of either where you are today and where you want to grow, or in the midst of a recession, where you feel that you are weak and how you want to strengthen and get more fit, right? And that is across all measures. That's financially, that's from a hiring perspective, that's from a culture perspective, all of those things. And I like to say, if we can name it, we can tame it, right? And that's why I say we want to get really specific on what those obstacles are. Because the other thing that is part of the nature of this species known as the entrepreneur is that we have a lot of voices in our head. We spend a lot of time talking to ourselves and listening too much to either the voices between our own ears or the voices of the advisors we've surrounded ourselves with, whether they are the Aunt Sally's or, you know, some guru that we found on the internet, right? And it's really easy to get overwhelmed. But I have found in my experience, both my own journey and in talking with a lot of business owners, that a lot of the obstacles we think are there are self-imposed. And when we push ourselves or lean upon somebody else, a business advisor, a sounding board, whoever, to talk out loud and give voice to those obstacles, when we're challenged on those and we're pressed to come up with a name for those, we find that a lot of them just disappear into the ether, right? And then we get down to what's really standing in our way. And once you can narrow it down to a skinny list of very specific obstacles, then you can look at that and say, how can we turn these into opportunities? How can we minimize them? How can we engineer them out? How can we use this as an opportunity to bring our people into a stronger cohesion by assigning them to go and solve the obstacle? So there's so many opportunities that come up through obstacles. So rather than avoid them, ignore them, pretend they don't exist, or invent them where they don't exist, you have to name them so you can tame them.
Yeah. I'm chuckling in my mind. I'm thinking of the Chevy Chase, squirrel.
Oh, let me tell you. I don't know which is worse as an entrepreneur of the two syndromes, whether it's shiny object syndrome, because it's so easy to get enamored with the next big idea or the next innovation or the next self-help advice, or the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Right? In the early days of being an entrepreneur, I would walk into a client's site, and as I'm opening the door into the lobby, that little voice in my head would say, "Is today the day? Is today the day they're going to figure out that I'm really not as good as I think I am?" Right? And we all have those voices in our heads. So I don't know which one is worse, and I'm sure it depends on the entrepreneur, and it also depends on the point in your journey, right?
Yeah, that's right. It does, and it always, it's at least the imposter syndrome one is one I do talk frequently about, and particularly even my coaching business is a bit bifurcated. I do the small business advisory, but I also do, large Fortune 500 executive coaching, and imposter syndrome exists there too in spades. I mean, it is all over that environment. People get promoted and moved around, and they had a good job and now they've got a great job, and they spend about 48 hours figuring out what the real new job is about, and they go, oh my God, if they only knew what I don't know, you know.
But it's so interesting you say that. So about a year and a half ago, I was doing some market research for a talk I was giving, and I invited about 300 or so heads of talent in large organizations to have a conversation with me. And I invited about 100 newly promoted leaders to have a conversation. And I just wanted to understand their perspectives on what I was about to talk about. And the overall kind of trend of these heads of talent was, we promote these new leaders and they walk in with a lot of ego. And what was interesting was every single leader I talked to felt the opposite. They said, I spent the first 6 months with incredible anxiety that I was over promoted, that I was going to let down, the people that either brought me in or brought me up, and that I was going to fail. And it was that disconnect between the people put into positions of leadership and the people tasked with supporting their success that is the core of the problem. Because at the end of the day, we're all human. We all have doubt, right? And especially in a larger organization, the culture has evolved or perhaps devolved to the point where it's almost a stigma for you to raise your hand and say, I don't have all the answers and I'm afraid.
Yeah. No, it is a serious condition, and I agree with you, and I agree with both of those. You cited the shiny object syndrome and the imposter syndrome. I think if I had to make a generalization based on my own personal experience and those of my clients I've talked to in the small business realm, I think the imposter syndrome tends to go away quicker, simply because they're generally pursuing an idea that's theirs in the first place. So there's a certain level of passion and ownership that goes with that. However, that's not to say, as you described, and I'm right there with you in this scenario, you get that one opportunity to walk into one particular client and you go, oh my God, what if? And I had one of those early in my coaching business when I decided to finally pivot away from consulting and go into the coaching realm. It was very short order after I started that I got invited to participate in an incredibly large corporate arrangement. And I'm a guy that early retirement I alluded to in banking, I was with the Chase organization. We're a good sized organization, right? And so I had lived it and been there, but now getting the coaching opportunity at another large global brand, I was a little bit intimidated, and I called a couple of friends of mine who had come from that industry and had been very successful, very senior leaders in that industry. Called them and said, "What do I need to know about these guys? Are they true aliens or what?" And of course, the answer was no. They put their pants on the same way you do, and there's nothing different. And so I just, went marching right in, did my thing, and it was all fine. It was great. So
yeah, it's so funny though. Back in my corporate days, there was one of the senior ranking executives. I was about to go on stage. I was speaking at a managers conference, and I was nervous. And he said to me, and he did speeches all the time. He said, "Worry when you're not nervous." He said that it's the nerves that remind you to bring your A game, right? And I know it's one of the things that you communicate before you invite guests on your show. Make sure you bring your A game, because that's what that's what our audience deserves. And it's absolutely true. And it's and the other thing too is it's really a rare room where they bring rotten tomatoes and they're ready to hurl them at you from the back of the back of the stage. So but the nerves, the butterflies, that's just your adrenaline kind of getting organized,
Yeah. I'm reminded, and I'm going to share this, and I don't want to skew this discussion getting off in a religious or spiritual realm, but I want to share the story. In my young adult life, I got the chance to bring a message on a Sunday morning to my church, and it's the first time I ever thought about taking the pulpit where the big pastor always talked every week. And I was backstage and the associate pastor came up to me and said, "Doug, you look nervous." And I said, "Yeah, this is foreign territory for me." And he grinned and he said, "Well, I've got a news for you." He said, "You want to know the little prayer I say before I preach whenever I get invited?" And I said, "Sure, please tell me." He said, "It's a real simple one." I said, "Lord, I've got this outline, but don't let that stop you."
I love that.
And man, it just, everything just evaporated. It just,
Yeah,
everything went away. And I said, "Okay, that one I can do." So,
I love that. You know, I have found when I have, and I've spoken on some fairly big stages, not huge stages, but fairly big stages. And I have found that there is this moment where I just mentally let go of the plan. And you've prepared, you've made notes. I always bring notes with me to a podium, and I have yet to read them and when I'm up there, because like my field of vision for that just goes away anyway.
yeah,
And you just
yeah,
find that moment where you say, I'm gonna step off this platform into the abyss, and whatever's meant to happen is gonna happen.
yeah, that's right.
Yep.
That's right. You got called there for a reason. And back to on that point, that's what I go back to when I have a client profess to me a concern about the imposter syndrome. I always challenge them with the idea that, okay, well, let's talk about this a minute. You know, how long have you been with this company? Where did you come from? What were the skills that they recruited you for? How have you been able to demonstrate those up to now? And who's putting you in this position? And it's that last one, who put you in this position, is the kicker that always turns everybody around. And I tell people to realize that somebody somewhere thinks you've got this, or else they would not have made the decision to put you there.
That's right.
And if you respect their power, authority, and leadership at all, that's your, I call it the foothold climbing the mountain. You know, you see these mountain climbers, they bang the rings into the mountain and then they use that as their handhold and foothold going up. I said, knowing that that person put you in that position, that's your foothold on the mountain. Now keep climbing, you know. And it seems to resonate at that point. Everybody goes, "Yeah, you're right, they did." And I had one client a couple of years ago that had been hired by an institution to come in and specifically be the heir apparent to a very senior leader in the organization, but he was given a 2-year runway to assimilate and learn and know the organization. So the 2 years had gone by, and sure enough, the outgoing executive made his exit, and this new guy was put in the role. And that's when I got called. You know, this guy's got altitude sickness,
Yeah.
and so I was talking to him about all that, and I said, the stage was set. I mean, they told you from day one you were being hired for this, and they trusted your background and your pedigree, and now you've had the 2 years of preparation and training. Was there anything left out? He said, "No, they covered it pretty well." And I said, "And who moved you into this role?" And he said, "Well, ultimately it was the board of directors." And I'm going, "Okay, that's a pretty good group to
Yeah.
to rely on."
Good endorsement. Yep.
And I said, "Are you going to let them down?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Okay, well, you got it. You know, that's
Yeah.
it. That's all you need to know."
You know what drives me crazy, and this happens in every large organization. When they install, whether they promote internally or they hire from the outside, they install a new leader at a high level. The folks in the finance department, I have huge respect for the finance department, they serve a purpose. But for the first 6 months of that new leader's tenure, they plan for a dip in performance. They plan for it. And, there's something to this sort of, what you touched upon just a moment ago about kind of almost speaking out into the universe an expectation of success. Why do they plan for a dip in performance rather than put a system and a support structure in place so that they can more reliably predict dominance? But they don't do that. They predict a dip. And you don't think the leader senses that? You don't think the leader knows that, yeah, I have 2 years to prove myself, but I know the first six months are going to be, horrendous? Why does it have to be like that?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, good point. Good point.
It's just, it's a pet peeve. You mentioned the leaders, so I just had to go on that little soapbox for just a moment.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, Claire, I think we're about out of time. This has been wonderful. Tell people how they can best get a hold of you if they're interested in following up.
Yeah, absolutely. The best way to get a hold of me is to go onto my website, clairechandler.net. There's a bunch of information on there. You can get to know me a little bit more. And there's a big shiny orange box in the top right corner that says work with Claire. If this resonated with you at all, click that nice shiny box. You're going to answer a couple of questions and we'll have a conversation. And if, there's something that I can help you with, I will absolutely tell you what that is.
That's great. Well, we will have all that information in our show notes, and you'll be able to see that link there. And Claire, thank you so much. I think this has been really helpful. I love your framework. I love that information. And I think the bottom line, if I may sum it up, I think if you're out there owning a business right now and you've got some concern for the recession, now is an important time to do some thinking and maybe resetting some of these elements and thinking about it. But it's not an immediate run to the exits. You've got a lot of opportunity here that you can seize upon. And just perhaps if you're the one thinking about scaling rather than cutting, you could be the one that could survive this and now dominate your market while everybody else is panicking and cutting back. And so just think about that a little bit. And I know both of us would be happy to talk to you about that if that's really a hang up you've got going on right now. But it's so important you do make some decisions during this time. And I love Claire's framework for it. I think those are the right ones to be going after. So again, Claire, thanks.
Thank you. It's been great to have this conversation.
And I want to remind everybody, if you're listening to this on your favorite streaming channel, we do have a video version of this over on a YouTube channel by the same name, Leadership Powered by Common Sense. You can hop over there, take a look at the whole video archive, and leave us a like, subscribe to the channel if you will, and you're welcome to join in the conversation on many of the other topics we've got. So we're going to wrap this episode up now, say goodbye, and thank you for listening. Take care.
You've been listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense, hosted by Doug Thorpe. If you would like to know more about the coaching and advisory services he provides, visit dougthorpe.com.